What are your overall thoughts about Bradley Beal being traded to the Phoenix Suns?
Initially, I was kind of confused. I don't really understand it, to be honest with you, just because once again, we're talking about another ball dominant player who has been the focal piece of the Washington Wizards organization for some time now. I mean, outside of Kristaps Porzingis and John Wall stint there, Bradley Beal has been the leading scorer. He has been the bucket getter. He has been one of the better defenders on the team. So for him to now not only play second fiddle, but potentially third fiddle, I don't know how that's going to work. You have three scorers, three people that need to have the ball in their hand in Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. And if DeAndre Ayton stays on this team, he is going to need his fair share of touches as well. But again, like Kyle said, he's been linked to some rumors potentially to get rid of some of the cap and bring in some role players because as of right now, between those four players in Ayton, Booker, Durant, and now Beal, their cap salary is, I think their salary cap hit is $162 million just between those four players. So it's quite a bit of money. We'll see what happens, how they work it around. But to go back to the Bradley Beal topic, I'm just, I'm a little perplexed. There is some internal rumblings around rumor mills, and again, just people that think that this is a little too convenient. Again, Bradley Beal had a number of teams that he was looking to waive his no trade clause for, as he is the only player remaining in the NBA that had that. And the teams that were speculating were the Sacramento Kings, Milwaukee Bucks, Miami Heat, and the Phoenix Suns. He ends up going to the Suns, but not because of, I guess, merit. I would probably say there's a little bit of funny business here. His agent is the son of the CEO of the Phoenix Suns. There's a direct correlation, a personal relationship, obviously family ties. I'm not saying that there's a conspiracy here, but I mean, they made it happen. The trade was a little less than what people would have assumed for Bradley Beal's talents. I mean, realistically, the Wizards got more of a haul for Russell Westbrook than they did for Bradley Beal. And not to say that Russell Westbrook's a bad player, but when you talk about the significance and caliber, Bradley Beal is better than Russell Westbrook for a number of different reasons. Yes, Russell was a triple double machine. Yes, Russ got them to the playoffs with Bradley Beal. But for all the things that Washington acquired for him, to me, it's just a little bit weird that Bradley Beal ended up just going to Phoenix for a 38-year-old Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, second round picks, and pick swaps. But Brian Windhorst had stated earlier this week, earlier last week, that no matter what the deal may be for Bradley, don't be surprised if it is kind of small, because apparently Bradley's big supermax contract that he had signed last season does not kick into effect until next year. So he's not going to be that big hit of $50+ million a year until next season, which gives Phoenix time to either offload that contract to someone else if this year doesn't work, and or if they were to kind of restructure some people's contracts to make it work and salary cap friendly. We'll see what happens, but people are assuming right off the bat, because you have three superstars, that makes you a finals contender, that makes you a champion. We've seen it time and time again. Big threes have failed. LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh failed in the first year of their championship run. They also lost to the Spurs. Oklahoma City didn't have necessarily a big three, but prime Harden, prime KD, and Russell Westbrook weren't able to get it done. Then you go and you do KD, Kyrie, and Harden. That doesn't pan out. Then you do KD, Booker, Ayton, and Chris Paul. That doesn't pan out. So I don't necessarily know what's going to come of it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like this is going to be the end all be all. They're going to 100% win the championship. We saw last year that they struggled off the bench. They had no depth. They had no scoring outside of Booker and KD. Yes, Bradley Beal's a third option, but if those three options are cold or they're debating on who's going to get the ball, you're going to need some help. You're going to need people to fill those roster seats. I mean, again, $162 million as of right now between those four players. So there's room for error. There's room for improvement. We'll see what happens in Phoenix. I mean, for Bradley Beal, congratulations. You get what you wanted. But again, there's just a little bit of suspect, in my opinion, as to how he got to Phoenix.
Yeah, and I will say, when it comes from, I guess, the conflict of interest part of where you're talking between the Suns CEO and Bradley Beal's agents being family members, that's definitely a point of contention as far as I see it. I don't think that the NBA is actually going to go out of their way to be able to rescind the trade, even though that we have seen them do it once in the past with the Chris Paul trade going to LA, going to the Lakers. That one didn't go through. I think you got to actually make somewhat of a decent point. It's like, hey, this is a pretty low end trade package for somebody of this magnitude. And I wouldn't be surprised if teams are looking around the league saying, hey, like, this, I don't think really matches what Bradley Beal's value is. But nonetheless, the trade did go through. And unless the NBA really steps out of their way to rescind this trade, Bradley Beal is going to be a Phoenix Sun going into next year. But as I see it right now when it comes to the Suns, just because that Bradley Beal is now a member of the Phoenix Suns, there's no guarantee that they're just going to instantly walk to the finals. And we've seen many teams try to assemble these super teams where you have 2 to 3 superstars and you're starting 5. And a lot of times it's actually ended in failure to the point where they're not even getting to the conference finals in whether it's the Western Conference or the Eastern Conference. We just saw a couple years of KD being in Brooklyn where he joined forces with James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and they never made an NBA Finals within that three-headed trio. And even though that you have some really good shooters in Phoenix right now with Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and now Bradley Beal, don't get me wrong, they're going to shoot the lights out. They're going to be able to score pretty effectively. But when you look at what they're going to present defensively, this is where I really see this team falling short just because, granted, these guys could score at will, but I wouldn't really say that any of these guys that I just mentioned with Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant are elite defenders. KD's really the only one that's going to be able to defend the rim because they'll basically split KD and DeAndre Ayton. And that's assuming that DeAndre Ayton's going to be a member of the Phoenix Suns going into next year, which there's no guarantee of that happening. So defensively, I think they're going to struggle if they keep the roster as is. More than likely, that will not be the case because I would assume that Phoenix is going to make a series of moves over the next couple of weeks before the season starts to bolster this roster because, like I said, defensively, I think they will struggle, but offensively, their depth could be a question here because their starting 5 is legit as far as I see it. They got Ayton, KD, Bradley Beal, and Booker. I mean, your starting 5 is going to be fine, but after that, you got Cam Payne, Terrence Ross, and Torrey Craig. Is that going to be enough to be able to carry the Phoenix Suns past a Western Conference Finals going into a potential NBA Finals situation? I don't see that happening. So my expectation is that, they made the move for Bradley Beal. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to offload DeAndre Ayton to kind of help out their cap situation because, like Kev said, their payroll with just those 4 players in particular is extremely high. So I would imagine that Phoenix is going to be in a situation where they're going to have to adjust some contracts, try to alleviate some of the cap issues so that they could be able to bring in some decent role players to bolster not the starting 5, but your bench 5 or just your bench rotation as a whole to give them a better look as a well-rounded team going into next year. Overall, to me, I don't think that this trade really moves the needle in a positive or negative direction for Phoenix. I think they kind of stay in the same position that they've been in. They're still a contender in the Western Conference as far as I see it. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're an instant NBA Finals contender because they made this move. But overall, Bradley Beal, I think, has a better opportunity to be able to pursue an NBA championship as a member of the Phoenix Suns compared to what he was as a member of the Washington Wizards. I think that's really the only positive takeaway that I could take from this trade here for Bradley Beal. But overall, it's like I said, I think there's going to be a series of moves that Phoenix is going to make over the next couple of weeks. And I think that is going to determine what this team is really going to look like once the season starts coming around in October.